Well, I think that's one of the basic, perhaps the most basic reason for the imposter syndrome that INFJs, very frequently testify to suffering from, is linked to alienation. And if you remember the Ecstatic Soul, which was my first book on the INFJ mind, the INFJ consciousness, which you can still get below, you will remember that alienation is kind of the core driving concept. You could almost call it a leitmotif motif, whereby NI and SE, because NI is in the dominant position and SE is in the inferior position, there's an alienation from external reality and a tendency to live in the alternate world of NI. Because NI is a holism. Okay, I've discussed this in my videos previously as well. NI is a holism, unlike NE, which is more an atomism. NE is able to aggregate lots of pieces of data from external reality and kind of weave them together, even if it doesn't make complete coherent sense. These items can dwell next to each other more or less harmoniously and be kind of pulled at one moment or another by the strong NE user for a particular purpose. The INFJ mind is holistic, which means that it all comes together all at once. It's hard to update, it moves slowly, but it's also remarkably systematic in some sense. But precisely because there is this mind holism, NI has a tendency to allow INFJs to live in an alternate reality, which is the reality of NI, which, because it is holistic, has the veridicality of a world. It can be experienced like a world because it is holistically integrated. It has the verisimilitude required to be a world, which is not the case in the case of the atomistic mental framework of a strong NE user. So it's always the same conclusion. The strong NE user is very much more likely to be in the real world than the strong NI user because of this mental holism and the fact that you can escape into that alternate reality, which you will want to do a lot of the time because reality is too painful. And it's one of the purposes of this book, The Infinite Soul, to try to explore how, to develop coping mechanisms to deal with external reality in the modern world today for INFJs. It's my recent book. You can get it or drop reviews if you haven't yet, right? The Infinite Soul. So the holism of the INFJ mind, reinforced by alienation, means that INFJs are going to live in the alternate reality a lot of the time. And they're going to experience what I've called severance, right? The fact that you have one foot in external reality and one foot in the NI world, okay? Now, if you have one foot in external reality and one foot in the NI world, what happens? Well, you get imposter syndrome, because you get imposter syndrome usually when you're at work, when you engage in a particular kind of activity that exposes you to the critical eye of other people, that is to say, of the social world. But these other people and this social world is very much in external reality. It's the return of external reality, reminding you that you have one foot in it, right? And this is where you experience the imposter syndrome. If you were completely lost in your NI world, completely solipsistic in this sense, you would not experience the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is always external reality reminding you that it is there and that you're playing a role in it, whether you like it or not. And usually, if you have to earn an income, if you have to make a living, which most of us do, you will be put in positions where you are likely to have a particular position, a job, and therefore that you'll be likely to experience imposter syndrome. And the imposter syndrome, I think, a lot of the time is simply, it's not so simple really, but on an unconscious level, is this awareness that, yeah, people think that I'm like that as I present myself to them, as I introduce myself to them, as I manifest myself to them in external reality, but really I'm much more comfortable belonging to the NI world and no one seeing, and they can't see it, and if only they could see it, they would think that I'm quite strange, and I don't really embody these qualities that I represent in external reality. And here you have the roots, I think, of the INFJ brand of imposter syndrome. So what is the key? Well, the key is probably to try to integrate external reality as much as possible and make it not simply coexist in this kind of shaky and rickety fashion with the NI world, but to really create a transcendence where you can inhabit both worlds at once. You don't want to denigrate you don't want to nullify, right? You don't want to atrophy the NI world that constitutes your most, intensely personal subjectivity, because that's also something that you should value very much. But you should allow it to live in external reality, which is, like I said, the goal of this book in some sense, to become a spiritualized INFJ, right? To not have a foot in one world and the other foot in the other world, but to have both feet in both. But to know more about this, you should read this book, right? I've also made lots of videos on that topic, but perhaps I will also discuss that again in future videos, concepts of like islands of spirits and other concepts where we can explore how it is possible to resolve the paradox of severance toward full integration. This also has very much to do, by the way, with Jung's concept of individuation, of course. But more about that in future videos. So again, if you have not got these books, you can buy them at the links below. And don't forget that I also have a Patreon page where you can support my work, access some bonus content, interact with me, make recommendations for videos, because I'm always really hungry for new recommendations. I make a lot of videos these days, so you can understand why. And it's from $3.50 a month. It's hugely a huge support to help me keep going. So please consider it. You can also make a one-off donation to my PayPal. The link is right next to the Patreon link. Give a like to this video, and I will see you next time, guys. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.